Shady Bobby. Welcome to Wrasslin with Big E and the POT. Podcast tag champs of the whole world, slamming like a DDT. Got it like just like a figure four. Hulk Hogan, all they do is flex. Talking wrestling while they get the dough. Off the top like a superplex. Think they laying up, hell no. Dusty Rose with the elbow. From the corner like a stinging splash, straight to the face. I know you felt those. Hey, y'all crying out for help though. Rising up like the dead man. About to go upside your head like Stone Cold with the bedpan. Bottom line, if you want the facts, welcome to Wrestling's where you need to be. Shady Bobby, this show improved like John Cena, you ain't seeing me. Bottom line, if you want the facts, welcome to Wrestling's where you need to be. Shady Bobby, this show improved like John Cena, you ain't seeing me. Yeah.
Hey, welcome to Wrasslin. I'm the POT, and that's my tag team partner, Big E, aka them Wrestling Boys. And we're here to bring you another episode of premium wrestling content. So, what's up, Big E?
Hey, brother, what's going on, brother?
Nah, man. Just here.
Hey, y'all do know this is the podcast like no other with me and my brother. This is Welcome to Wrasslin. And
welcome to Wrasslin.
This is episode 3. Episode 3. We busting them out. We busting them out left and right, dog. Feedback is still positive, and only negative feedback is from my son. So, but yeah, man, this is episode 3, and it's gonna be our first deep dive. But
right.
Before we get into that, let's just go into a little what's happening this week in wrestling. Just a small quick recap of SmackDown and AEW Dynamite. We'll just stick to those two this week. SmackDown was okay. It's a 3-hour show, and definitely got to get used to SmackDown being 3 hours on Friday night. You know, and I don't know if that's going to be viewed more for the 18 and under group, because you got a Friday night, group that'll be out and about a lot of times with, older adults and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's what they're trying to do. We'll see as we go along. But the show was good. Paul Heyman started it out talking about Roman Reigns going to the Royal Rumble and saying he wanted his championship back, letting Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes came out, and of course, KO came out and jumped on Cody. And that Royal Rumble's coming up, and got about 20 days. And that ladder match is going to be something else, I believe. I believe they're going to take it to a whole different level, and they're going to leave it all out there on that one. I think it's going to be a real good one to look for. As far as Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga coming out, that set up the main event for Cody Rhodes and Jimmy Uso and Fatu and Tama Tonga. You had LA Knight and Nakamura fighting again, no contest. So pretty sure they'll either fight each other at the Rumble or the next pay-per-view for SmackDown.
A key factor in that is the bloodline, because they've been feuding with LA Knight as well. So
right,
he's out there.
LA Knight threw Jacob Fatu out the building.
Right.
Yeah. So Bailey's number 1 contender after the number 1 contender match with he had Bianca Belair and Naomi, and I forget who else was in there, but Bailey won that. It was different seeing Naomi and Bianca having the matching gear on, but fighting against each other. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, you got Bailey number 1 contender. Of course, Kevin Owens interfered in the main event and left Fatu and Tama Tonga out there to beat up on Jimmy Uso by himself, and they got the win. So anxious to see what happens in a couple of weeks as they set up for the Rumble. Definitely anxious to see what happens on Raw Monday. Because like we talked about before, this is the real test on how they handle with, all the celebrities not being there, no old school guys being there, just strictly their storylines, the present storylines, present talent. So we're gonna see how that goes. AEW,
business as usual.
Yeah, you want to shine in on AEW this week?
Yeah, there's a couple of highlights that really stood out to me. And the first I want to bring up is Kenny Omega, man.
Yeah.
Man been out for about a year or so, had a real serious illness. Didn't know if he was gonna be able to wrestle again or let alone live a normal life. Very, very emotional to me. Because you got to think about it, man. These guys out here pouring their hearts out, and somebody like Omega, he's known around the world, New Japan and AEW.
Right.
Man, been putting on Dave Meltzer 7-star matches.
Yeah.
Past decade or so.
Right.
So that was cool. That was cool for him to come back. And of
Yeah.
course, the Don Callis family, they came out there to interrupt things with Cage and man, what's the big dude name? Lance Archer.
Right.
And they
The Murder Hawk.
Right, and the Fletcher guy, they came out there and they jumped on Omega, and then Will Ospreay of all people came out to make the save. And they kind of flirted with them like, okay, you helped me, but we're not really cool. Are we cool? Are we not cool? So I thought that was just a cool dynamic, just going forward with that. Another thing stood out to me was, well, we'll talk about this one at last, but let's talk about Adam Copeland and his feud with the Death Riders.
Death Riders, yeah.
With Moxley, of course, Moxley, the AEW World Champion, who has a match with Powerhouse Hobbs next Wednesday on Dynamite for the title.
Yeah, that's going to be crazy. That's going to be good. I like Powerhouse Hobbs.
That's going to be.
Yeah.
I like Hobbs too. He's a beast.
Yeah.
He's a beast. But we know where that's going. We know Copeland eventually going to get that title shot. But of course, the Death Riders, they came and they jumped on Copeland. And then FTR came out there and made the save. What you call a rated FTR?
Rated FTR, yeah.
Rated. So that is cool. Plus, it's always cool to see Adam Copeland. And you gotta think, man, that guy. How much longer are we going to see him? He's one of those guys that he near the end of his career, and we're going to miss him while he's gone. Even though after WrestleMania 27, we've
been there before. Yeah.
We've been there for like 10 years. We had no clue he's going to come back. But it's been cool seeing his last run in the WWE, now the AEW.
Right.
So I'm really, really excited about that. And the last thing, which is a very big deal, is your boy, Double J, Jeff Jarrett.
JEFFJARRETT.
Double J, Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah.
And I guess it's kind of like the whole Cena thing.
Right.
He's pretty much his little farewell tour, 12-time world champion. But then your boy came out there. And that, pretty much offered his friendship while he was taking shots at him at the same time.
Right. That's what he does. Of course, we're talking about MJF, right? Maxwell Jacob Freeman.
MJF.
Going down as the greatest heel of all time.
Jacob Freeman.
Yeah.
Hey, I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah.
So, of course, Double J turned down his offer.
Right.
And we know that that's going to be something to see down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeff Jarrett's another one of those guys that just not normal how they age. And still can go. I like the way he put it about, do I still have enough to get to that mountaintop? Because he's the king of the mountain.
Right.
And
king of the mountain.
And has had runs he's been in every never held the WWE World Title or the WWE title, but everywhere else he has. WCW, TNA. He had his run in Global Force Wrestling when he was running that, and stuff in Japan, part of the Bullet Club. He's done everything, and his resume is way more in depth when you think about it than when you just hear Double J. But if you really put it in the brain, like, definitely a Hall of Famer. He is a Hall of Famer. And,
already.
So, it's just, you like to see some of these guys, man, that can wrestle this long. You love to see them go out like that and be able to go out on your own terms and go out. This is the way I'm going out, instead of having an injury and stop you, or, just not getting over anymore. The man either is hated or loved wherever he goes. And I think, even though he's a Hall of Famer, 12-time champion, you got to look at him as a little underrated.
I agree. Because he came from a wrestling family. Dad was a major promoter. If I'm not mistaken,
grandmother was a promoter.
Yeah, grandmother. Right. So much respect to Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Wish him the best of luck in this last run.
Absolutely.
That he's going to go through. And MJF is a great opponent to start that run off with, because he's going to bring the best out of Double J, Jeff Jarrett.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, it's episode 3, and this episode is just strictly called The Horsemen. And we're doing our first deep dive, and we're going to go into this is going to be a 2-parter, because there's no way we can do this in an hour, the whole thing. So we're going to go from 85 to 91. And we're going to do our first deep dive about the 4 Horsemen. And I think it's mine and one of our favorite factions of all time. And if you're listening or watching and you love wrestling and you're old school wrestling, it's probably one of your favorites. But what we're going to do is just talk about the history, do a deep dive into all the different lineups. But it's all about the 4 Horsemen today. Definitely about the 4 Horsemen. So just a real quick breakdown. Horsemen was one of the most iconic factions in professional wrestling history. Originated at Jim Crockett Promotions, which later became WCW, and the group was just dominant in championships and as heels throughout the 80s and through the 90s. And yeah, man. So let's just talk about it. I'll open it up. We'll go to we can go all the way back to the 70s, really, if you want to think about the Horsemen, because you had Gene and Ole Anderson, which was the Minnesota Wrecking Crew. And it was Ric Flair was a kayfabe cousin of theirs, because they were all from Minnesota,
right,
and Minneapolis. So, and I mean, my goodness, you can say a number of wrestlers that's from there, but we won't get into that right now.
That's an episode for another day, bro.
Right. It is, because it's crazy. A couple of them went to college together, high school together, and all became superstars, not just jobbers or just professional wrestlers. They all became superstars. So, yeah, definitely something we can get into. But yeah, they were kayfabe cousins, so that would connect. Ole and Flair already had a connection. And then we'll jump into 85. 85 is when it originated. Do you got to it's a couple of things that you can say when it originated, but I believe that you have the best one. I'll let you go ahead and start it off.
All right. Well, we're going to start out with a particular date. September 29th, 1985 at the Omni in Atlanta.
The world famous Omni.
The world famous Omni. Nature Boy Ric Flair was the world NWA world champion at the time. He had a cage match versus Nikita Koloff from the Russians. Flair won the match, but then the Russians proceeded to attack Flair after the match. Ivan, Crusher Khrushchev, they were 3-on-1. They jumped on H. Oh, look who makes the save. Dusty Rhodes, of all people. Dusty Rhodes came out doing his elbows, fought off the Russians. Then two individuals came in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
The Andersons, Ole and Arn.
Right. The new Minnesota Wrecking Crew.
They jumped the new Minnesota Wrecking Crew.
Right.
They jumped on Dusty. And man, 3-on-1. Nate's locked the cage with none of the faces can get in. And they broke Dusty leg, came off the top rope, broke Dusty leg. And then you had the faces like the Rock and Roll Express, Magnum TA, Sam Houston, all those guys. They were trying to climb the cage. They were trying to get in to help Nate, but they couldn't get in until the damage was done. And even though that wasn't officially saying that night, they were saying, "Oh, we're the Horsemen." But that shortly after that was when they started doing promos together as like a group. Of course, they added Tully.
Right.
So
1985, yeah, you're right. So after that, they started getting into doing 8-man tags Saturday morning or Saturday evening. And one particular Saturday is when they after the 8-man tag, they cut the promo. And it was basically at the end of the promo, Double A was saying that not since the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse have so few wrecked so much havoc on so many. Meaning 4 guys wreaking havoc over a whole company. And to them, nobody has done that since biblical times. And that's when the very next week, when they came out, the whole crowd was throwing that 4 up. All right. And let's just give a little rundown. You got Nate, World Heavyweight Champion. You got Ole Anderson, Arn Anderson, and Tully Blanchard, and JJ Dillon. Now, JJ was Tully's manager, and then pretty much took over as being the manager of the Horsemen.
Right.
Now, the group was pretty much formed to support Flair's run as the champion and keep him the champion.
Right.
And that was the main focus of them. You got to be an elite wrestler. You got to be a great wrestler, but you got to understand that you don't sign a contract against Flair. Flair keeps their belt, and we all stay paid, and we all stay the Horsemen.
Right.
And that's how it was put out. Those feuds were, of course, with Dusty, and that was their primary adversary, Magnum TA, which you got to wonder if Magnum doesn't have that accident. Are the Horsemen that dominant? Are the Horsemen that big? Because he definitely gets a title run or two if he doesn't get hurt. So that's always something to think about. But they also feuded with Ricky Steamboat, Nikita Koloff, and Rock and Roll Express. So they had a real good. The original lineup had the longest run together. It was a good 2 years before Luger came up from Florida and kind of took Ole's place. He was like a hang around type of guy.
Right.
So JJ Dillon took him under his wing, and eventually when Ole turned face against the Horsemen, then Luger took his rightful spot in there. And then that's when we have this lineup. You got Flair, Tully, Arn, and Luger, and still with JJ Dillon. I don't like this lineup.
Luger kind of stuck out like a sore thumb or something. Like he didn't really. It was like, I mean, and Luger. People who know wrestling know Les Luger was a phenomenal shape.
Mm.
Great physique. But he wasn't a veteran in the ring. His ring style. His ring work wasn't especially at that time, early in his career. So he wasn't the greatest wrestler.
They were all
Which all
technical
the
wrestlers,
guys,
and he was a powerhouse.
Right. So, that was that. Especially looking back at it, it definitely that didn't really fit.
Well, let's just get into it. Like I say, it didn't fit, didn't like it. And this was March of '87 when he finally joined. That's when they had the promo on Saturday morning when Tully called out Ole, saying, "Hey, if you was taking care of business instead of running around with that snot-nosed kid of yours," talking about going to his son's wrestling match and stuff. And not only is that why Tully's the biggest heel, because he turned Ole Anderson face.
Right.
Nobody could do that. Ole Anderson is not a face. He is not a good guy in real life or in wrestling.
In or outside the ring, right? Let them tell it.
Right. So we're gonna go to the end of '87, Bunkhouse Stampedes, and the first one you had JJ, Tully, Arn, and Luger were the last four. And of course, it was like a Royal Rumble over the top rope. So JJ's like, I'll never be able to do this again. Let me win. Arn double A high fives him, goes over the ropes. Tully does the same thing. Luger doesn't do it. Walks around with his weightlifting belt on and all that stuff. Because the Bunkhouse Stampede was like street fights, and back in the day,
they
wear
had
the blue
jeans
and
the
blue jeans with the knee pads out.
He about to go down.
Right. So he didn't want to do that. Of course, that was him. And he had already said before he didn't want JJ interfering in his matches anymore. And they had that promo where he said, he could accompany to the ring and all that. But as far as advice and everything, he wouldn't be taking no more advice from her, any more help. So that already put him in a bad way with them. So as soon as he turned around, threw JJ over the top rope, won the Bunkhouse Stampede. They all came in, jumped on him, and he's out of the Horsemen. And that's when he hooks up with Barry Windham. And at the first Clash of the Champions, him and Barry Windham beat Double A and Tully for the tag team titles. That was January '88. And so we'll jump to April '88. And you got Barry Windham and Luger for the rematch with Double A and Tully. And they got the titles on the line. And during the match, Luger was in the match almost the whole time. And then he finally makes the tag. Barry Windham gets in, does his little thing, he's not even in there 5 minutes to go tag back out. And of course, Luger's still on the floor from the beating he's just been taking for the last 20, 25 minutes. And that's when you got J.J. Dillon saying, I told you he wouldn't be there for you. I told you he wouldn't be there. So he finally gets up on the apron. Luger slaps his hand and suplexes him into the ring, throws the 4 up, gets out of the ring. Double A pin Luger, and Double A and Tully are the tag team champions. And we have the most greatest 4 horsemen lineup of all time. And that's Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Tully, and Barry Windham. You had Barry Windham with the U.S. title, Ric Flair with the world title, and Tully and Arn were the tag champs. Now, this is the group that went into the Hall of Fame. This is the group that everybody looks at as being the greatest. And it lasted 5 months.
That's unbelievable.
5 months. By September, it was over. Double A, Tully leave Jim Crockett Promotions and go to WWF to become the Brain Busters with Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Absolutely.
And it left Flair and Wyndham to kind of go for themselves, and they would bring in Kendall Wyndham a little bit. They had Michael P.S. Hayes help out a little bit, and Flair and Wyndham lost the match to Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert and their surprise partner on TV, who was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And after the match, they fired J.J. Dillon, but J.J. was leaving anyway to go take an office position at WWE. Right. So you've got J.J. Dillon. J.J. Dillon's gone. The Enforcer, Arn Anderson's gone. Tully Blanchard's gone. You've got one original, which is Flair. And then you got Barry Windham. So,
right
after and the funny thing is, and it's not funny, but it's just crazy how you just think that formation, that lineup was 5 months, dog. 5 months. And that lineup goes down as four of the greatest technicians at that time as a faction. Now you got a couple of factions later on that could kind of compete with that as far as the talent that they had, but nobody ever seen all four guys like that together at that time.
You got to think about like Barry Windham, for example. Like, he was one of those guys that, he had Broadway matches with Nage, and dude just so phenomenal in the ring. He's actually one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. And dude is so smooth in the ring, tall, rangy, bounce off them ropes. The superplex was just amazing. But he changed up a little bit. When he went to Dark Side, what he started doing, he had the glove. He started doing the claw. He changed up. He worked as a heel. He changed up his style a little bit. He still was rangy. He still was Barry Windham. But when he went with the Horsemen, it was when he had that glove on, and he did the claw. He was definitely a major factor. Like you said, United States champion. Definitely, to your point, definitely one of the greatest group of wrestlers, technicians, especially of that era, which that says a lot, because there's a lot of guys were technicians, and it's just amazing that they only been together 5 months. If we didn't do our research, I wouldn't have believed you. I'd be like, nah, they was
absolutely not. No, I wouldn't have believed it either. You know, so then you got it in '89 when all this happens. You got a little transition period when you still got Flair and Wyndham. Wyndham kind of goes out on his own. You still got Flair. Then you got back. Arn eventually came back, and you had them three together, and then they joined with Sting. And Sting was a Horseman. And Ole was more of a manager type, but they were still calling themselves the Four Horsemen, still throwing the four up, but Ole was the manager. And it was another thing like the Dusty thing was. Sting came to help Flair when he was getting jumped by Terry Funk and the Great Muta, and they didn't jump Sting when it first happened like they did Dusty, but as soon as Sting won the Iron Man and won that title, the championship match, he didn't go away from it, and then they kicked him out of the Horsemen at the Clash of Champions in Corpus Christi, Texas. And that's when Ole told him, "You're not a Horseman anymore."
Yeah. Well, that Iron Man competition was at Starrcade '89, which was also at the world famous Omni in Atlanta.
Well, so Barry Windham's already took off we get the Chi-Town heat, and Barry Windham gets hurt, breaks his arm. He goes to WWE, breaks his hand rather, goes to WWE, becomes the Widowmaker. And so get to 90, you got the Black Scorpion. I haven't seen Flair in a while. You got Sting running around, chasing around with the Black Scorpion. And there's a number of things you've heard. Al Perez was supposed to be the Black Scorpion. He was at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then And then
at the
it ended
Clash
up
of
being Ric
Champions.
Flair. Right. It ended up being Flair. And
Arcade 90.
Right. And
Cage.
absolutely. So you get a new faction, you get a new formation now. You got Barry Windham comes back. You got Arn Anderson, you got Ric Flair, and now you got Sid Vicious. And Sid didn't at first. Sid was like the muscle. Bring the muscle. You know what I mean?
Right.
But, he had that singlet on, which didn't fit them. It was weird looking. He really is not the best talker. He's a good talker on the way to the ring. He was always doing that. Who's the man? All that stuff. That's what everybody loved about him. The persona that came out of him on the way to the ring. Now he was tough as the Skyscrapers, and when he was with the Skyscrapers, went to WWE with Psycho Sid, came back, go back to WWE, come back. But that formation lasted maybe 7 months, because by May of 90, they got together October 90. By May of 91, Sid is left for the WWE. And then by July, Flair had been fired.
Something key that happened in 90 at Halloween Havoc, which of course is in October, where Sting defended the world title versus Sid.
Mm-hmm.
And you remember in the main event when Sid fought Sting,
right?
You remember what happened? Remember when we had a imposter Sting?
Imposter Sting, yeah, and it was actually Barry Windham. Barry Windham, right?
Absolutely,
because they fought back to the locker room, and then when the Sting and Vicious came back, it was actually Barry Windham, and of course Sid pinned him. He thought he won the world title, and then Sting makes himself back out there, restart the match. He wins and keeps the title. Right. So by May of 91, Sid leaves, and by August, by July, Flair's fired. He's in WWE by August, over to make a run over there. So let's talk about a little bit what happens after that, because it's a 2-year gap, because we won't see another Horseman faction until 93. And it's important to talk about where these guys went to and what they were doing. Barry Windham, to me, is so good, but so underrated.
Oh, hell yeah.
One of my favorites. He was so big and so fast. And
he was smooth, man.
Man, the superplex was so cool. The way he did the superplex and would flip over on top of him. And when he was Barry Windham, he was Barry. But when he got to the WWE, they just tried to do so many different things with him when he could have just been Barry Windham.
Yeah, they gave him them bad gimmicks, just like he was the stalker that one time.
Right.
Like, really?
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Right.
Man, you know who reminds me? I would say this, since Barry Windham's older than this gentleman, but you know who reminds me of Barry Windham in today's WWF roster?
Mm-hmm.
Randy Orton.
Yeah.
Second generation wrestler. Well, actually, Randy, a third generation.
Right, right.
Of course, those of you who don't know, Barry Windham's father is Black Jack Mulligan, which was pretty famous in the 60s and the 70s. He also part tag team Black Jacks with Jack Lanza. But Randy Orton was, him and Barry both similar styles, real smooth, big guys.
Right.
But that's when I think of today's roster, even though Randy Orton is a super veteran at this point, their style kind of reminds me of like real smooth in the ring. Can have a good match with anybody. It doesn't matter who it is.
Right, right. and can wrestle with any size person. Could have a good match with a little guy, good match with somebody their size, somebody bigger. They can have a match with anybody.
Right.
Especially when Bear would do that flying lariat, just all up and down the when he turned heel, the better he got on the mic.
Right.
Also makes you kind of think of a Scott Steiner, who really wasn't good on the mic at all until he turned heel, and then he just got great. Started, Freakzilla and all that, Big Booty Daddy and all that stuff.
I mean, he was a mathematician.
Right. Now, Flair would go off to go to the WWE. He feuded with Hogan for a little while. They didn't have the match they should have at WrestleMania.
Still don't understand that.
Right. First one to win the world title at the Royal Rumble, in the Royal Rumble. I believe he was number 3.
Number 3.
Feuded with the Macho Man, and then came back.
Bret Hart.
Right, Bret Hart. And of course, he always comes back, always came back home to WCW. There was WCW at the time when he came back. Wyndham went solo and would go back and forth, WCW to WWE. He'd work out a contract, come back. I liked the most I liked Wyndham when he was at the WWE was he was with the Blackjacks. With him and
with Bradshaw.
He had that black hair with the black mustache. They both had, and I mean, they were so big. And you could tell he was getting bigger.
Right.
He wasn't cut up like Bradshaw was at the time. He's just getting big, but he could still go, and he was full throttle out there no matter what. Could still go and still wrestle better than anybody on the roster almost. Double A moved on to the Dangerous Alliance with Paulie Dangerously.
Which is a great faction.
Right. Tag team with Larry Zbyszko. Tag team with Beautiful Bobby. And was still the enforcer. He had the one run in WWE with Tully Blanchard when they were the Brainbusters and came back and didn't go back, of course, until the company was sold later on, but never wrestled again after I want to say it was 96. I had to look that up. But he only had that one run in WWE, and all the other times he was always with the Horsemen. Him and Nate are the only ones that were the originators that stayed a part of the Horsemen all throughout.
Right.
And like I say, he was the enforcer. And of course he actually feuded with Wyndham. Remember they slammed the car door on his hand?
Yeah.
So we wouldn't see another faction formation of the Horsemen until 93 when Flair came back. You had Arn come back, and that's what we'll pick up next time, and we'll go through the final chapters of the Horsemen, which weren't as good as the beginning, but had some real good. They had some good storylines going on later on.
And some interesting characters as well.
Absolutely, and we'll definitely get into that, and but definitely get into like Brian Pillman and Benoit and all that. But yeah, man, like I say, it's went a little quicker than I thought, but I know we still couldn't get the whole thing in. So the next time we do a deep dive, it will be part 2 of the Horseman faction, greatest faction of all time.
Absolutely.
Hey guys, this has been episode 3, first part 1 of the Horsemen. And remember, any questions, anything you want to ask us, leave it in the comments or hit us up at w2wrasslin@gmail.com. That's W, the number 2 wrestling @gmail.com. Don't forget, we are on Spotify and we are on YouTube. And YouTube is Welcome to Wrasslin. Spotify is just Welcome to Wrasslin. Always look for the number 2. And we will be on more platforms as the time goes by. We'll be on the Apple Podcast by next week. And keep going. And I hope you guys keep tuning in and hope we can keep providing you the content that you like to listen and hear to.
Welcome to Wrasslin.
and Chetty Bobby. Welcome to Wrasslin with Big E and the POT. Podcast tag champs of the whole world, slamming like a DDT. Got it like just like a figure four. Hulk Hogan, all they do is flex. Talking wrestling while they get the dough. Off the top like a superplex. Think they letting up? Hell no. Dusty Rose with the elbow. From the corner like a stinging splash. Straight to the face, I know you felt those. Hey, y'all crying out for help though. Rising up like the dead man. About to go upside your head like Stone Cold with the bedpan. Bottom line, if you want the facts, welcome to Wrasslin where you need to be. Chetty Bobby, this show improved like John Cena, you ain't seeing me. Bottom line, if you want the facts, welcome to Wrasslin where you need to be. Chetty Bobby, this show improved like John Cena, you ain't seeing me. Yeah.